I would have to say that my hemisphere dominance would be the right hemisphere. People who have right brain functions would be considered the creative ones. They are very imaginative, fantasy based, random, and would like art, music, and architecture. Personally, I've always liked to be very creative and artsy. I remember when I was like 8, I would get my parents to buy me pillowcases with patterns on them, and I would sew the designs and make it look all pretty. Also, I've always liked to draw and paint since I was inspired by my brother. I would take a bunch of art classes. I remember I would try to recreate his drawings, but I guess I wasn't as talented. But I would still try. I also really love music. I mean, who doesn't? But what I really enjoy most is classical music. I just love listening to the piano and the violins that play. It's just really soothing and always puts me in a good mood. People like Yanni Yurima and other composers had really inspired me that I even begged my dad to buy me a piano, just like the ones they use, the fancy kind. Finally, he did get me one, but it's basically an antique. I think it's from the 1940s. But I mean, what really matters is that it plays. Although I never took lessons, I was really determined to at least play one song, so I self-taught myself and did up learning a few. Many people have always asked why is it that we dream. Well, the functions of dreams are to satisfy our own wishes, bodily memories, to reflect cognitive development, or to develop neural pathways. Theorists like Freud, Cartwright, Hobson, and Macaulay are experts in dreams. Personally, I like Freud, Hobson, and Macaulay. Freud believed in that when we dream, we have wish fulfillment. So I remember when I would have some crazy dreams, I would always want to know what they meant because I always thought there had to be a meaning behind it. And when we did that dream analysis in class and I searched up what my dream meant, it made a lot of sense to me. Also, Hobson and Macaulay thought of activation synthesis and how neural firings tie in with real life experiences, and it reminded me of what my parents would always tell me after I had told them some crazy dream that I had. They'd always nag at me and be like, well, what were you watching? See, I told you shouldn't watch those things. And at first I would be like, whatever, but when I found out about this, I was like, oh shoot, they were right. Observational learning. I took more notice of this, especially when my nieces were born. My parents and I had become to realize that they were saying some things that they really shouldn't say, and when my parents would ask their parents why they were saying those types of things, they would always be like, oh, they must have learned it at school or somewhere. But my parents would say that children are a reflection of how their parents are, and then I would think about it, and it was really true because children especially are observational learners, and because of modeling, everything they see or do they will imitate. And I would think back to Albert Bandura's Bobo doll and how all the children were aggressive and acted the way their parents did because of it. Also, every time I do something like act all serious or repeat back to my parents things that they nag me about, they always get so surprised and they'll ask me, why are you like that, or who taught you those things? And I always say, I'm just an observational learner. You guys are my role models. They don't get so happy about it though. When it comes to problem solving, my favorite problem solving strategies are heuristics and intuition. Since I'm sort of a lazy person, I always look for the easy way out. I remember when I was smaller and I had to organize my room, I would just shove everything under my bed and I would be so happy since it didn't even take me 10 minutes. But that happiness would end when my dad would come in and check my room. I would also have to say that I have a lot of intuition because I remember every time I would go out with friends, I would always have a strange feeling and I would make suggestions. At first my friends would think I was weird, but once I convinced them and what I thought would happen happened, they would always be like, oh, how did you know that? I would just say that I have a good sense of intuition. I use defense mechanisms like reaction formation and projection to avoid internal conflict and pain and to protect my ID, superego, and ego. Reaction formation is when you prevent dangerous impulses from being expressed in behavior by exaggerating opposite behavior. So basically you treat someone nicely even though you really don't like them. For example, when I don't like something about someone, I never call them out for it, but I secretly talk about it to them, like I mention it or try to hint it so that they know that that quality they have is annoying, because I could never tell someone straight up that I don't like them. I'm too nice. I always use projection to attribute unacceptable impulses to others and over-exaggerate them to direct attention away from myself. So when my parents get mad at me for not cleaning my room, I always use projection for them to not be so mad at me or to just get the attention away from myself. I always blame it on them and tell them it's their fault, especially my dad, because I had been accustomed to him always cleaning up after me, so now it's harder for me to do it on my own, so it's really not my fault. In the personality disorders, I fall into the anxious and fearful group. I am avoidant and dependent. So people that are avoidant have the inability to resolve their codependent need for connection or their codependent fear of rejection and or discomfort, anxiety around others. But in my case, I've learned that I always need someone to be with me because I just can't do things by myself, which is really bad because now that I'm getting older, I really need to start becoming more independent. But at the same time, I do get anxiety when I'm around other people. I just become really serious and my hands get all clammy and I just don't like it. Also, I have to say that I am also a bit dependent on others, just like I mentioned before. Every time my parents tell me that I have to start learning how to cook and learning how to be able to maintain myself on my own, I always get scared because I have that need to be taken care of and a fear of ending up alone and having to buy a lot of cats and being that crazy cat lady. According to John May, emotional intelligence is when one is able to identify and control one's emotions and others. I think I'm pretty good at controlling my emotions or knowing when to express certain ones in certain situations. I always find people telling me that when I hang out with them, I always come off as a chill person with no worries, or when one of my parents' friends meet me, they always tell my parents I'm so serious. But in reality, inside I'm feeling like a bunch of emotions. I've just learned to keep them under control. Also, personally, I've always really disliked those people that can never tell when someone is sad or mad, and they just open their mouth and say something to make them even more mad or sad. So I always told myself that I would never be one of those people. After watching Paul Ekman's video on how to detect emotions, I learned on how to tell when someone is lying. This really helped me because I am a really gullible person, so I would always be lied to and not even notice that they were lying to me. Once my dad was trying to tell me about something, but he was lying to me about it, and at first it didn't make sense to me, so I started to ask him questions, and he would start to pause a lot more, and the pitch of his voice would change, and then I would be like, "You're lying to me," and he would get all surprised and ask me how I knew. Also, I've always been really good at being able to tell when people are feeling sad or the difference between a fake smile and a genuine smile. So for example, if one of my friends is feeling really sad but they're trying really hard to hide it and they're doing a good job since everyone else can't tell if they are or not, I'm usually the one to say something or to try to cheer them up. Even if they do say they're fine, I know they're not. Classical conditioning is a process of learning associations when a neutral stimulus is paired with a response, so we learn to associate two stimuli and anticipate events. Now that I'm older, I thought about it and came up with the concepts. The UCS would be my mom and the chancla, the UCR would be me being scared, the CS would be like any other type of punishment, and the CR would be me again being scared. I just thought that was really funny. Another example would be that there was also higher order conditioning where a new neutral stimulus becomes a new conditioned stimulus. So since I first feared my mom, I would also come to fear my dad. But the fear is much weaker since my dad is much more nicer than my mom when it comes to being punished.